Words of remembrance are at the very heart of our Christian faith. In our sacraments, we remember Jesus' baptism and his Last Supper, and we study ancient history really each week as we read scriptures and hear sermons. We need to remember the saving acts of God, I think, because we humans can be so forgetful, except when bad things happen. Somehow we have perfect recall on those worst moments of our life. When I did oral history interviews with my father's mother and her little sisters, I was surprised at how few good things they could remember. They were born just before the turn of the last century, and yet they couldn't seem to remember the great day when World War I ended, or when women got the right to vote. But they could remember quite vividly and in great detail what they each got for Christmas back in 1906. Some of them were still mad about having gotten less than the others that year, the year that their mother had died and their poor father was left alone with 8 children. Most of us, I think, are truly gifted in remembering the worst of times. Some of us even have great talent for holding grudges or for worrying. I myself am a great worrier. I come from a long line of skilled worriers. My grandmother Leela was an expert at worrying, and so was her daughter, my mother. They could see the threat of death or dismemberment in every sharpened pencil, in every stick or stone that lay across the path. And I was an adult before I heard a story that said a lot about that for me. It seems my grandmother Leela had been 9 and outside playing with her younger sister, who was 4. They were laughing and chasing each other all around the front yard when her baby sister tripped on the edge of the front walk and fell and hit her head. The next day she died. It really made me think about it, how our worries are often deeply rooted in our life experiences. People laugh at me because I'm a compulsive car door locker, but I have been one ever since I was stopped at a suburban stop sign in North Carolina and a stranger tried to force his way into my car. What do you worry about? Do you worry that you may not have enough money or enough food to eat? I'm always amazed at my in-laws' pantry and freezer, which is always stocked to the brim, even though there are only 2 of them. But I can understand why, because they went through some pretty awful times growing up in New Mexico during the Great Depression. Do you worry that you'll one day say the wrong thing and make a fool of yourself? Or maybe that you'll get blamed for something you didn't do? I bet if that's true, it's happened to you before. The many dangers, toils, and snares of our lives can leave us truly bound up with worry. Injustices can leave us bound with bitterness. But the word of the Lord has the power to set us free. Jesus knew that. Jesus was preaching to people who had a lot to worry about. Poverty, political oppression, violence, racism, leprosy, not to mention the usual that we still face today, death and taxes. The people of Israel were taxed ruthlessly under the Roman Empire. In some places, the poor were being taxed by 35%. And like many of the less affluent citizens of our country who are losing their homes to soaring interest rates, they were going bankrupt and losing their land in record numbers. So Jesus knew that times were hard and there were good reasons to worry. So what in the world was he thinking about here in Matthew when he preaches to them not to worry? I've learned that there's something to be said for how when you have absolutely nothing left in the world to lose, that's when you're the most free from worry. I remember talking one time to a member of my first church in California about her worries about finding time to organize all her pictures before she died. She was growing older, and she had been a professional photographer, so she'd been trying for years to try to find the time to sort through boxes and boxes of photos and put them into albums to give to her children and grandchildren. But like many of us with big projects before us, she never quite got around to it. And I remember one warm October Sunday standing with her outside on the church lawn and looking up at the dry leaves whirling and some little wisps of smoke rising over the hills in Berkeley. And by the end of that day, the firestorm in Oakland had killed 25 people, injured 150, and destroyed more than 3,000 homes, including 30 homes of our church members. And this photographer's house had been one of the homes that had burned to the ground. After that day, getting photos into albums was the least of her worries. She came to church the next Sunday just very grateful to be alive because there were many of her friends and neighbors who were not so lucky. And I'll never forget, I've never seen anyone look so dismal and so unhappy in a beautiful, bright, new blue dress. She had to buy all new clothes because her whole wardrobe, along with everything else she had ever owned, had burned up. So of course she was grieving all of this, the loss of life, the loss of her home, but also the destruction of her life's work. Those boxes and boxes of beautiful photographs. All her family's memories were gone forever. But then a miracle started to happen. After we prayed for her and others that Sunday, photos started arriving in her mailbox that next week. And over the next few weeks, she was inundated with more of those photos than she knew quite what to do with. Because not only had she taken hundreds of pictures of her kids as they were growing up, she had mailed off hundreds of those pictures to her friends and relatives.